Hey folks, Gary here with Paramount Tactical, your source for guns, gear, training, and tactics, all brought to you by Real World Experience. So in today's video, I'm going to be talking about something that's very important, and I was originally just going to do this video for our online training academy, which you haven't checked that out. Make sure you go check that out. Go to Paramount Tactical at Patreon, or there's links down below. But anyways, this is one of the supplemental videos that I wanted to kind of just give to our training clients to make sure that they're doing the little things right. But I decided I was going to go ahead and release this to YouTube and Rumble as well. I'm also going to show a very similar video for a carbine, but that will not be on YouTube. That will only be on Rumble. So make sure you're also following us on Rumble as well. We've had lots of issues with YouTube taking down our videos and giving us strikes and all the other nonsense, and I'm just kind of done with it. But you know, most of you think you know how to load a gun, and I'm telling you right now, most of you are doing it wrong. And not only is it a big deal, it's actually a really big deal from a philosophical standpoint, from a training standpoint, and from a self-defense standpoint. So I want to make sure that each and every one of you are doing this correctly, and really just making sure that we approach training and everything that we do with a firearm with a little bit more intent and purpose, and that's what this is about. Now, most of you out there, when you load a handgun, basically what most of you do, and again, I have nothing but dummy rounds in there, I've checked this, most of you just throw this thing in here, you know, and then put your gun away, holster up, right? The problem with that is this right here. You end up with something like this, and you can see that this magazine didn't fully seat. As a matter of fact, on this particular occasion, we didn't even get a round in the chamber. And that happens a lot. I see this every single handgun course we have, even though during both out on the range and during our classroom session, I hit on this. So we are in such a bad habit of this that, again, it's because you've done it wrong. And when we go to reach for a gun, you're not getting serious and really thinking about it. So the correct way to load a gun is anytime that I'm going to load a gun, number one, the moment that I'm reaching for a handgun or a rifle or whatever else, folks, you should have a switch that goes off in your head. All right. At that moment, suddenly everything is serious, and everything you do from that moment on, you're approaching with intent and purpose. So when I go to reach for a handgun, I'm locking that slide back to the rear. I'm getting this gun up in my workspace, and your workspace is defined as 6 to 9 inches from your nose. It's not down here. It's not down here. I constantly see this debate going on of, you know, when you're reloading, should you be looking at your gun or should you be looking at the target? Well, folks, if you are using an actual workspace, the correct workspace, you don't have to choose between the two. Right now, I can always either see my target or my magazine well, one of those two in my peripheral. I'm focused on one or the other. I can look down at my mag well, I still see my target in my peripheral, and I can look down, I can look at my target and still see my mag well in my peripheral. So this is what your workspace should be. Not only does that give us the advantage of being able to see both at any one time, just from an economy of motion, this also is more beneficial because number one, it puts the gun in the correct angle that is biomechanically correct. See, I'm right here, right? So now this normal motion, just with my elbow, is in the correct alignment with the gun, and I'm making sure it's right here. So as soon as I'm loaded up, I know I'm pressing out, all right? So now I'm just going from here to here. So from economy of motion standpoint, from an ergonomic standpoint, it all makes more sense to have your gun up here as well as a tactical standard, right? So again, I can still see my target, I can still see my mag well. So this is much better. So this is our workspace. This is what it should look like each and every single time. And that is opposed to, you know, bringing my gun down here, having to either look here or here, one of the two, all right? I don't get both. I'm right here. And on top of that, once I get my gun loaded, as I'm pressing back out, I have to bring the gun back up in line with my vision and then press out. So it's slower, it makes less sense, but it does take training to do it correctly, right? So keep that in mind. Now, again, anytime that I'm loading the gun, all right, I'm actually locking that slide back to the rear. I'm doing a 3-point check to make sure there's no obstruction in my gun, no casing stuck in there, no lint, belly fuzz, whatever else, right? So we're good to go. And then I'm actually practicing just like an emergency or combat reload. I get that gun at my workspace and we're right there. So that is my initial load and or administrative load, whatever you want to call those two. Those both describing the exact same thing. But that is making sure that your gun is going to load, because what happens, folks, and hold on, I got a slide to show you. whether we're talking about a Glock, it doesn't matter, you know, a SIG, M&P, doesn't matter. If you look at the back of your magazines, right? We have the actual cartridge and then we have a notch in the back of that magazine. All right, if you look on this slide, you'll notice that right here, where this actually engages that round is right here on this bar. And you'll notice that bar has, it looks like brass color. That is brass coming off of your cartridge. Folks, for your magazine to seat fully in your magazine well, it actually has to, you actually have to compress those rounds. Now, I only got 1 or 2 rounds in here. It's pretty easy. But when I have a full magazine, when we are trying to load on a closed slide, you're pushing against all the force of that spring being fully compressed. So that's why your magazine doesn't always seat, or it loads 1 round and then bounces back out or unseats. And then you go to shoot and either you get a click, nothing, and your magazine falls out, or you get 1 bang and then your magazine falls out. The slide itself becomes an obstruction. But when we lock that slide back to the rear, we're removing that obstruction, and we don't need to slam it or slap it or beat it or anything else like that. All we got to do is it's gonna seat right away. And then at that point, you can either use the slingshot method, or I always use the slide release because my thumbs are longer and it's definitely faster. So if you can use the slide release consistently and you're not trying to completely change your grip to get there, folks, use the slide release. It is faster, it is easier. There's plenty of potential energy in the spring from that position. I never have a problem with it loading around. And you know, unless your gun is just so dirty, then you got other problems. But just hitting that slide release, all right, I know that I have a round chambered. And then if I need to, if I'm still questioning that, of course we can do a chamber check or a press check. I see I have a round in the chamber. Anytime that I do a press check like that, I'm gonna make sure that that slide is fully in battery, because folks, if you leave your gun like this, which sometimes they will stay like that, just a little bit right here at that point, the trigger won't do anything. So you gotta make sure that that gun or that slide is fully in battery. So folks, that is really important. It's one of those little things, and I'm telling you, it's those little things like that that are holding most of you back. So you gotta make sure, you know, the devil is in the details, life or death is in the details. And the one time that you don't load correctly is the one time that it's gonna matter. That's why we have to be very deliberate on every time that we do anything with a firearm. You'll get much, much better. And on top of that, going back to one of the things I always preach is the fact that many of you and all of us train on doing fast reloads, right? Well, if sometimes when you're just lollygagging around and you do a reload like this, which is essentially, you know, your administrative load or initial load, all I'm doing, I'm not getting good repetitions. Whereas every time that I go to load this gun with the initial or administrative load, I am basically practicing an emergency reload, right? I'm doing it every single time. I'm telling you folks, if every single time that you have ever loaded a pistol, you got in 1 good repetition of essentially an emergency reload, that initial load, many of you would shave seconds off of every single emergency reload. You'd be much better. As a matter of fact, you probably wouldn't even have to practice emergency or combat reloads. You know, so again, be deliberate about it. Think about what you're doing. And the last thing that we ever want is for that gun to go click when we want it to go bang. And that is one way that it will happen. And I see it on the range every single course that we have. Somebody gets sloppy. They just, you know, load it up, do one of those, and they either didn't chamber around or their magazine didn't seat correctly. So last time, lock the slide back to the rear, do a 3-point check, making sure there's nothing inside the magazine well, nothing in the chamber and nothing on the rear of the slide. At that point, I get the gun in my workspace, which is 6 to 9 inches from my nose. I go ahead, grab my magazine, which my magazines are positioned to where they are bullets forward. So I get that out, I insert that magazine, I let the slide go forward. If I'm in an area or I'm able to, I can go ahead and press out, check my sights, make sure I'm good, come back, reholster, carefully, visually, reluctantly, and now I know for a fact my gun is good to go. I don't have to think about it. I got a good repetition as far as practicing emergency reload, and I just have taken a much better, much more purposeful approach to training, to my firearm, and making sure that I'm ready to defend myself or I'm ready to train. All right, folks, well, I hope that was helpful. I hope that was informative, or at least some food for thought. If you got anything out of this video, make sure you hit like. If you have I don't know, an argument against anything that I just did, throw it down in the comments below. Let's talk it out. I'm all about that. And we'd appreciate if you commented anyhow. Also, on Wednesdays, every Wednesday, we have our Dangerous Liberty podcast, Wednesday live at 7 p.m. We talk about guns, gear, politics. We have guests on all the time. It's a great time. We want you to be part of this community, not just part of this page. And by the way, I'm definitely moving a lot more content to Rumble. So make sure that you subscribe to this page so we can continue to push this and use this as a platform to push people over to Rumble, which definitely seems to be a little bit more appreciative of the Second Amendment. So anyways, and while Guns and Gear is great, what we're really about is training. So make sure you go to ParamountTactical.com. Go check out our upcoming training schedule. We'd love to have you out. We'd love to meet you in person. And if you got anything out of this video, I'm telling you right now, you'll have a lot more fun out on the range with us as well. But until next time, stay armed, stay ready. We'll talk to you soon.